name's Lizzie. Welcome to my channel. Sorry I had a headband on, like a really cool one, and I just got home from work, so now my hair's all jacked, but I just could not stand it on my head for another minute. Anyway, I put my first Halloween story up in the community post. I'll show you what it looks like. I'm going to read it for you for all the parents or people who just don't read. I'm going to read it. You can just play this and listen. It's probably not going to be entertaining to watch, but I'll do my best to keep looking up at you. But this is what the community post looks like. There's a picture of do not go into the woods. There's a little expert. I'll read it for you. It's called Camp Rosewood. A story about a group of girls who attend their beloved Camp Rosewood for the summer, for the final time, as they would be too old to return as campers next summer. What is supposed to be the best summer of their lives and cherished friendship quickly is turned into a nightmare when a prison bus is found tipped over a few miles outside of the summer camp. When a storm kicks up and traps the campers in their cabins, the prisoners take over the camp. But not everyone is a victim. A couple make it out to tell the story. Years later, they return for truth and revenge on the one that killed their friends. Will they succeed in getting their justice, or will the truth die with them? If you're interested in the story, you can keep watching, because you just click the little, if you can see it, there's a tiny, right above this picture is a blue link. You just click it. It will take you right to the page. I actually typed this up last night. I came home. I wrote this in like an hour. There's a bunch of typos. I'm really sorry, but I have a problem with putting my work out there. Like I've written so much in my life, and it just I hide it in my closet. I hide it in my drawers. So I've just been doing this thing where as soon as I'm done, I'm just hitting send and like forcing myself to just put it in the universe and see what happens. So that's why I'm reading it, because I'm gonna maybe ad-lib a few things or reword it that I'm gonna go back and fix it eventually, but I'd rather just write a second Halloween story and keep the mojo going, because these aren't books, these are short stories. But anyway, let's get into it. Camp Rosewood. It was the 1st of July. Sorry. It was the 1st of July. My throat did not like that sentence. And I was headed to the one place I could truly be myself with the 5 people I considered to be my best friends. Camp Rosewood is a tradition in my family. My grandmother spent her years of middle school there with her friends, and then my mother did the same, and all 3 of my older sisters attended the 3 years they qualified to go to the summer camp too. I am in the last year at Camp Rosewood, as I will be starting high school in the fall. It was both exciting and sad. Before Camp Rosewood, there's Camp Lily Pad for elementary school girls. That is where I met Rhea Clark, also an 8th grader and a middle school graduate. She was from Miami, Florida. I live in Manhattan with my family, and although we are on the same coast, we only see each other during our summers together. At the end of this year, there is no more summer camps for girls. As if high school is the point where we all suddenly just stop wanting to spend our summers away from our parents. I had some camps I could look into, but my friends would not have the same opportunity, unfortunately. Much like the rest of the world, Camp Rosewood has an order to its social classes inside the camp. The upper wooded cabins, furthest from the beach and fun, are for what the camp calls the scholarship cabins, which everyone knew meant that their family could not afford to send them. Most of the girls in these cabins had to enter a contest to win their bed, and they were not always welcomed back all the years of the camp. Rhea Clark is one of the scholarship kids, as well as my friend Rue Taylor. Rue is a child of 2 immigrants and the first of her family to ever be born in the United States. And they also live in New York City. They live in Chinatown. Rue and I see each other every Sunday in Central Park when the weather is nice. I do not attend her school, and we lead very different cultural lives that keep us from being friends openly. Her parents would say she had no place being friends with someone from my class, that I would only lead her into trouble, or that I would get bored of her and she would be hurt. We had heard it all. The bottom line was I was rich and she was poor, and the whole world tried to tear us apart for it. But we didn't let it. Somehow we would find an excuse to make our way to the park every Sunday. We would get some lunch and we would spend a few hours together pretending we were back at camp. We both count down the days until we can go back. Without Rue, I would not make it all year. Rhea's mom is the head housekeeper in a hotel in Miami. Although she makes good money, Rhea is in better condition than her cousins. She still has 4 other little siblings, and her father is deaf, and they struggle as a family. Even if I offered to pay for Rhea to come to be in private summer camp with me, her parents would be too proud to let her accept it. They insisted that they would earn their place in this country. Unlike Rue's parents, Rhea's parents had finally become citizens, and they were set on raising Rhea with their traditions and customs. If I offered to pay for Rue, her parents and their Chinese culture would be offended that I had assumed they could not pay their own way in life. They would find a way around it, never really wanting Rue to be friends with a girl like me. Rhoda was like me. She came from a wealthy family that was not big on emotions or being parents at all. Both of us were raised in majority by staff. Both of our parents are dedicated professionals that got married to check it off. They had kids because, well, that was the next step, and now everything else was just to brag to their other rich friends about. It was a cold and loveless home with extremely high expectations to be perfect at all times, so that we dare not taint or embarrass the family name. Rhoda rebelled by being very loud about being a lesbian. Normally, she detested the dramatic displays of affection and welcomed the cold approach to love and relationships. But nothing made her happier than embarrassing and severely pissing off her parents every chance she got. Hence how she attended Camp Rosewood at all. Her parents prayed that it would calm her and tame her man-like ways. In other words, they hoped the camp would make her straight again. Rhoda often adds to her comedy routines that she is famous for back in Boston, where she is from. She goes on about how she convinced her parents to send her to an all-girls reform school when she really just wanted an all-you-can-eat buffet. That was Rhoda, the mouth that pushed your buttons and had 0 limits and total badassness. She was the cool every woman wanted to be, and she detested coming to camp. The only reason she came at all was because she wanted to see us. She reminded us every day of the summer how much Rosewood was a prison for girls. I could never convince her to come to another 4 years of camp. This was going to be the last summer together. We would all start high school in the fall and become real women, and the memory of camp and our deep friendship would just be a story we would all tell our daughters one day when it was their time to come to camp. It made me immensely sad, but I also wanted to make sure we had the best summer ever. I took extra care in packing to make sure the 5 of us, would try all the things that people in high school try with each other, so that we can always say that we did it first together at Camp Rosewood. It would be the only way to make sure that none of us forgot one another. And somehow, I was convinced we were going to find a way to be friends forever. Chapter 2. As per usual, I was bunked in the best of the cabins. I hated every minute of being there, and as usual, I had planned to trade with another camper to be in a bunk with my friends. All we had to do was swap before they did head count. We knew the drill. Rue, Rhoda, Jessa, Rhea, and myself, with all our suitcases, locked arms, and hiked furthest out. The best way to have a good summer was to go down the path the evening and night supervisors did not care to dwell on for too long. The furthest cabins were usually the last checked on and too far from earshot to be warned to keep it down. Sometimes they were run down and not yet updated. No matter the cabin, they needed to be together and we had to pull it off. We had already pulled it off 2 years in a row. We knew the cabin we wanted, the one we promised we would end up in. There was a section only for senior campers, which is us. There were legends about it. Everyone who stayed in that cabin had the freedom to slip out of the camp and hike a half-mile into town from the woods behind the cabin. We had planned to do that very thing as often as we could. We were the first on the last of the trail, with a hilly incline to the last cabins. Girls were coming up closer, also trying to score the famous cabin. We didn't look back, and we ran for it. Our legs were killing us, and our lungs burned, but we made it to the cabin first. Ran inside, and slapped a suitcase and an ass on 5 of the 8 bunks. I preferred the top bunk and climbed up with a nice window view and was able to open the window from my head if I got too hot. Under me was Rue. She hated heights and preferred the bottom every year. We had a routine already worked out. The top bunk from me was Rhoda. Under her was Jessa, and on the top bunk on the other side of me was Rhea. We were all together like we wanted. In the bunkhouse we had talked about since freshman campers. We smiled at each other and all let out a wild roar and laughter just as the doors kicked open. We held our breath. There were 3 more beds and we had to keep any tattletales out. We smiled when we saw 2 friendly faces. They were twins, and although they were identical, they were very different. Maisie was sporty and into girls like Rhoda, and often connected up for makeout sessions when they thought none of us noticed. And Molly, who was very girly and very fashionable and into pop culture. They sometimes fought, but for the most part, despite their differences, they were best friends and mostly kept to themselves. On occasion, they would hang out with us or join our teams. So they were not strangers, and they were not tattletales. We were happy to share, and that left only 1 camper. Most people who returned would be paired. Only a new camper or a loner would come by themselves. Sometimes we got lucky, and there were more beds than campers. They took the bunk that was empty so that they could be on the same side. 1 bed was left remaining under Rhea. No one came before the roll call bell, but right after camp counselors came to take names for who was in each cabin, a girl came in. She was very pale and had very piercing blue eyes. Her hair was dark as night. I felt my stomach sink and felt a bit sick, but couldn't place why. She smiled and seemed nice enough. "Hello, I'm Winnie. I'm from Seattle." Rhoda smiles, turning on her charm. I roll to myself. Of course Rhoda wants to make a good impression. In case, good old Winnie over there bats for the same team. Rhoda may have been born a female, but everything about her was horny man. Hey, Winnie. I'm Rhoda. If you couldn't tell by my accent, I am from Boston. Nice to meet you. Is this your first year at Rosewood? She nods. Is it that obvious? I thought I had the seasoned camper look down before I left the hotel this morning. Everyone laughed, except me. Something felt like she was lying about that, but I couldn't understand why I was being that way towards her, so I shrugged it off and put a smile on my face. Rhea showed her the bunk beneath her. There is a bunk open under me if you want it. You picked the very best cabin to be in. Tell me, Winnie, how are your feelings about the rules of this place? We all held our breath. We knew Rhea was really asking if she was going to be cool or be a snitch, but we were unsure if Winnie had picked up on it. But Winnie just smiles. Rules are meant to be bent, aren't they? Everyone let out a cheer. It was going to be a really good summer. Everything couldn't have worked out better for us. But something about me felt like something was very, very wrong. Maybe it was because there was a new face. Maybe I was just sad it was the last experience together. Whatever it was, I was not going to let it get the best of me. We made quick work of unpacking the things we brought. I kept hidden my surprises in my duffel, in case Winnie was an undercover snitch. I would wait a bit on some things. First, they would be going to opening day lunch, and they would be spending the rest of the day doing opening day activities to get to know the other campers. The day was young, and it already felt like they had conquered the world. Chapter 3. A week had passed, and it had been like everything I had hoped it was. We had a wonderful 4th of July, and had opened the first of my list of tries on the 4th. I had snuck in a bottle of vodka and a jug of cranberry juice and tiny cans of pineapple juice. What looked like juice was the first time we all drank fruity adult beverages with an umbrella on the beach like the movies. Then we all had snuck into town for the fireworks and the carnival and were not even missed at all. And we were all back by curfew. We had all gotten drunk together, another first for us, and at some point we had all gotten a bit green and a little sick, and then experienced our first hangovers together. Lucky for us, I was prepared. I had brought bottled water and ibuprofen like my mom asked for every time. Then I made us all go eat some greasy food to soak up the alcohol, and we slept through our afternoon activities. It was both amazing and terrible. We loved it and wanted to do it every night of our adult lives. Sadly, we had lost the rest of the bottle of vodka at the carnival in town. No more lush nights for us. We would have to take 2 with our future high school friends. At least we had tried it together. Tonight I had pulled out the second try on the list for things for us to do. It was raining and all the evening activities were canceled due to severe weather alerts. Dinner was going to be delivered and we were all to stay in our cabins. From the look of the sky, we didn't doubt Nasty was coming. They brought us a box of food and drinks to hold us till morning, and a walkie-talkie radio to keep plugged in and on high at all times. They go over the route if we need to get to the mess hall, where the emergency meet point is, and they left flashlights and batteries and told us to lock our doors and put something heavy in front of it, and to shut and lock all windows and keep the blinds drawn, and if anyone comes around that is not a camper, to not go outside and use the radio and stay put. We all got a little scared by the tone in her voice, so when she left, we all got on Google to see what was going on. The storm was just a severe thunderstorm warning, but there was supposed to be back-to-back storms all night. But what got our hearts going was there was a prison bus found 3 miles from our camp and 2 miles from the town below on the highway, and they said that the busload of prisoners had escaped on foot. We clung together reading about the search. Rhoda taking control of the situation. "Look-see here, girls. 1, it is a shit show of a storm out there, and is only going to get worse. So if there are prisoners out there, they are hiding in some cave or some place trying to get through it. So they are not out here wandering the woods. With that said, we can, make sure no one can get in here just in case if that'll calm your asses down." Just then, there's a pounding on the door and we all jump and scream. But we hear Sally's voice and she seems scared. Sally was in the cabin a couple feet to the left. There were only 3 other cabins up here. All were lit up but Sally's. Rhoda moved the suitcases away from the door and opened it to the 8 wet and scared faces. Our power went out. Then we heard scratching on the cabin. "Can we stay the night with you?" Each one of them were clinging to their bags, pale, and if this was a prank, they were excellent actresses. I stepped up. "Of course. Maybe it is better to stick together. Maybe we should check on the others." Rhoda stops me from putting my shoes on. "Use the radio. If there is some psycho scratching on the cabin, then you shouldn't be out there. And none of you should have gone outside." Sally shuts the door. "Look, I know it seems nuts to you guys, but there are men out there. We saw boot marks." The rest of the girls behind her nod. I swallow. "How many?" Libby shudders. "I go trapping with my dad every weekend. I counted at least 6. You think it is the prison bus people?" Rhoda pinches her nose. "You Googled it. That means everyone knows then. Maybe it will help us." I take the radio off the charger and look at the list next to it. Each cabin has a channel. I call the cabins on our road. None have had any issues but agree that they should bunk up. The cabin to the right of us comes to gather with us. The other 2 cabins across the street are bunking up together. We hoped that if they had found the empty cabins, as in the prisoners, they would just stay in there and they would be caught by the counselors in the morning. That is when I decided that since we were all stuffed together like refugees, that we were going to have a little fun. I had brought a bag of weed from a cousin of mine and had him roll it into joints for me since we wouldn't have anything to smoke it with, nor would we know how to smoke it. Some of the girls had already smoked weed before and showed us how to do it. We took turns inhaling and coughing our faces off. Then we laughed, and although we kept the radio on low, we just hung out and danced. Board games came out of bags, and we forgot about the outside and the mysterious footprints. Then the sky opened up, and the rain pounded so hard. The lights flickered, so we set to work getting candles and flashlights ready. As if we had known all along, as soon as the last candle wick lit, the power in our cabin went out. We looked across the way, and the other cabins were dark too. I picked up the radio and called the cabin. No answer. I got out the binoculars I had brought with me, and I went to the window. I could see that both cabin doors were wide open. Both doors are open. How long has it been since we checked in with the other cabin? Rhoda rubs her face. Before Uno, so at least an hour. Why? Why would they have gone outside? Then the loud bang on the door and the screaming. We heard them, and as a group we heard them screaming. We as a group quickly unblocked the door. We opened it and 16 wet campers came tumbling inside, and hot on their heels were big, tall, angry men. I slammed the door and screamed, "They're coming up the front steps! Block the door!" Rhoda springs into action, hits the locks, and then helps push a bunk bed over and against the door. They do the same for the back door and the windows. We all huddled, holding each other, crying. I take out my radio and my hands are shaking, but I hold up the list. "I need a light." One of the campers holds up her flashlight. I read the channel for the mess hall and I try it. "Mess 1 to cabin 118. Over?" There is a static, but then a shaky voice. "Run! Get out! I'm dying! I'm dying!" I'm not acting this out very well. But the storm starts to slow and they hear screaming from the camp around them. All the girls scream when a rock breaks the window and a scary face comes into view. All the pretty ones hid it away. What sweet little cherry is ready to be tied in a knot? We all scream and start ramming stuff at the door. Everyone looks at me as the radio clicks. "Cabin 118, come in, this is the sheriff's department. What the hell is going on over here? You're blocking my traffic." "Prisoners here, killing us, help!" The ramming starts again. "Repeat it again, we cannot understand you." I take a deep breath as the room scrambling to hold the door closed and keep them from getting in the windows. Some were screaming and curled into balls on the ground. Some were praying. "The prisoners have taken over the camp and they are killing us. We are the last cabin and they are about to come in. I do not know how many of them. Please hurry." "Okay, we heard you and help is coming. Do everything you can to stay together and keep them out of that cabin. Do you know if there's anyone else alive?" "No, I don't know. Please hurry." "We are coming. Stay with me." Just then, rocks come through the other windows and men's faces press in any open cracks available. "Here, little chick. Here, little chick, chick." I step close enough to be seen. My body shakes, but I was done being a rat in a cage. "I have the sheriff here on the line, and he would really love to hear why you think you can come in a camp and take over like they're not going to notice. You're surrounded by po-pos, pal. If I were you, I would spend a little less time worrying about us chicks and be more concerned on saving your own pathetic little dicks. Because you're going back to the Slammer by Dawn cupcake, everything you have done and are doing is being recorded. So, here you have it. The world's biggest schmucks." The room is quiet. The girls were watching me in complete fear and shock. The man looks at the other man nervously. "The cops are here. We gotta go." And just as the hope rose on my face, a new face stepped into view. I find that hard to believe. He holds up a radio and shows her that he is the person she had just been speaking to. The girls cried and screamed behind me. The man smiled slowly. "That one is mine. She has a spine. I like her." In unison, the room divided. "We have to get the fuck out of here. We are sitting ducks here. If we open that door, they all get in, we all die. The only way to survive is to hold out in this cabin until daylight. At least then we can see what we're up against. They took all of the cabins. You don't know how many people are out there or what weapons they have." The chatter went on as once preteen girls were now women battle planning. I sat on the chair and watched the room. The range on this walkie was only 3 miles. It was only a half mile to town. There was a possibility that the stations were being picked up. I closed my eyes and thought of the first aid class we had taken on the second day. We had covered radio emergency channels, and I pinpointed the lesson where she said which station the local police and rescue were in. My fingers shook, but I dialed it. Sheriff, this is a camper at Camp Rosewood. Prisoners have taken over the camp. We need help. Over. There is nothing but static on the line. I take a deep breath as the girls in the room are now drawing very clear and defined battle lines. Half of the room protects the doors and windows, the other half on the ready to fight to get out. Sheriff, this is a camper at Camp Rosewood. The prisoners have taken over the camp and we need help. Please come in. Over. Again, static. The energy in the room was explosive. I take a deep breath. Sheriff, this is a camper at Camp Rosewood. We need help. The prisoners are here. Please come in. Over. Static again. I was just about to hit the button when the static turned to voice and the room stilled. This is Deputy Sheriff Wallace. I heard you. We are on our way. Where are you located? The room again stills, and she looks up. Hold them off. We have a real chance now. And just like that, all the girls were back on the same side and working together to keep the men out. We are in cabin 118 at the top of the hill and the last cabin before the tree line. How many campers are with you? I fight back the tears. Last I checked, there are 24. 3 cabins worth. We lost power and decided to bunk up, and then the men came. Good. What about the other cabins? Can you see or hear anyone? My hands shook. I called the mess hall like I was supposed to, but they were hurt. I think they might have died. I let go to cover my face. Okay, hang with me. Okay, sweetie? I know you're all scared. Can you tell me if anyone is hurt? We are okay here, but there was a lot of screaming, and now it's quiet. I think they are hurt very badly. The radio goes dead. I look over to see the man that had claimed me, almost in full view, watching me. I sat rooted to my seat. One day I will find you, and I will kill you for sending me back. It was Rhoda who stepped in front of me. You will never find any of us again, because you will never see the light of day again. Get out while you can, or I will kill you myself, you son of a bitch! The man steps back, and we hear them yelling and running about and hitting the cabin in anger, but they flee. The radio was dead, but help was coming. The room went quiet, watching her. Now what do we do? She stands up. We wait for the police to come. We can't know if they are gone. You saw them try to trick us earlier. The best thing to do is to stay put until help arrives. At least that is what they said in survival training. Rhoda sits next to her in a thump and covers her face. You have been right so far. I will take your word for it. I am not sure I'm ready to see what is out there, one way or another. Thank you, McKenna. You saved us. Everyone, plain wore out, began to sit and curl up, one to one, back to back. Not one word was spoken until we heard a knock on the cabin door almost a half hour later. If those men had not run off, they would have gotten into the cabin by the time the police showed up. I made a note of it, but said nothing. We were all let out of the cabin like cattle, single file. They told us to put our heads down, but I did not. I looked over to the cabins that we passed. I saw a girl dead on the grass and a few more on the porch. One cut in half near the door. I stopped and threw up. The policewoman helped me and flagged where I had gotten sick. She gave me some water and helped me continue to walk as my legs were shaky. There were bullet holes sprayed all over the lower levels and bodies laid everywhere. It was lucky for us that they had run out of bullets and ammo in general by the time they had made it up the hill. None of the other campers had tried to radio out. I thought that was odd. Had no one been near a radio when they had been attacked? Most of these cabins left the doors unlocked at night. It was a mistake that made them easy access, and the storm had been perfect cover to shield the noise from the town below. Out of everyone who was in the camp, including those that had worked there, only the 24 of us in cabin 118 had survived. Chapter 4. The weeks following the media circus that became to be known as the Camp Rosewood massacre. My parents had flown home earlier from their European trip to make sure I was all right. They actually stayed around for 2 weeks before leaving me with a hired professional to watch me at home. A stranger. They left me with a stranger after everything I had been through. Rue stopped answering my calls and stopped coming to the park. I had heard that her family was suing the camp and that Rhea and Jess's parents had joined, and my parents were going after the prison and not willing to stand with the others. I lost my friends because of it. Rhea responded a few times, and she said she was sorry to hear that they would not be going to trial together, but that ultimately they were two very different people from very different lives, and she just wanted to go on with hers. If she had never entered her world and went to a summer camp, then she would still be a normal girl. I was heartbroken, but I knew she was right. My parents had sold them and what we had gone through out, and were only thinking about themselves. I explained to them that I wanted to go with them, and I wanted to stand with them, but I was just a kid too, and they were not giving me a say. They understood, or so they said, and they wished me all the best like I was some distant person that they had met in passing. Rhoda stayed loyal to me leading up to the trial. She made her way to see me when she could, and she swore up and down that she understood I was being sold out too. Once the trial started, Rhoda stopped coming and embraced the fame side of things. She did not have support at home, and she did always want to be famous. I watched my friends go from outfits they had in their closets to designer clothing they were paid to wear over a very public, drawn-out trial. Their faces and names were splashed over the TV for weeks as the trial began, and it got even bigger. My friends and their families were no longer in the poorhouse. I followed up with the girls that were in the cabin. Most received a payout in some way, and most were kept out of the public. The one person she was never able to track down or find any information about was Winnie. Using my mother's contact and mimicking her voice, I hired a PI to track down any Winnie that had attended Camp Rosewood. What he found had brought chills soaring all over my body. Only one camper by the name of Winifred Jones had attended the camp in its 10th year, in 1943. She went by Winnie. They were attending the camp. A group of prisoners had escaped off a train that had derailed a few miles from the camp. A heavy and severe storm had come in, and the prisoners had come into the camp to take shelter. While they were there taking shelter, one of the prisoners, unable to control himself, took a knife from the kitchen and had hurt and killed 4 of the campers, leaving only one girl alive. That girl later went on to report that she had never seen any man come into her cabin. She survived because she had gotten under her bed unseen. The last line of her police report read, "I do not know where you were led to believe that a prisoner had come into our cabin. I got under my bed because I had looked out the window by pure luck and had seen Winnie walking up the path with a knife in her hand, looking like pure evil, and I felt sick, like something bad was going to happen. We were the last cabin, and no one came looking there. I waited until the screaming and movement stopped. I covered my mouth so no noise would come out, and I never moved one muscle. I watched Winnie stab all the girls over and over. While she did it, she was chanted a weird language. And then she took the blade on herself. She killed them, and then she killed herself. There were no prisoners at the camp. I hunted and hunted every ounce of research for months looking for any more details. I was only able to find a picture of Winnie. As I waited for it to be sent to me by snail mail, I researched Winnie and her family. Like me, she was very wealthy, but she was raised by her stepmother, who was believed to be very evil. Winnie was openly abused most of her childhood until her 16th birthday, when her aunt had drunk a little too much punch and fell out the third-floor window of her family's estate. But something told me Winnie had finally snapped and done it, as she was the only other person in the house at the time. That must have been her first taste at killing, and she wanted more. It looked like she had gotten away with it until she had some anger issues later that year, and she was marked for her hot temper and abuse of other people. Eventually, the case was reopened, and while they prepped for trial, she went to camp and plotted a way for her final act. When the photo came in, I was like a kid on Christmas. I just had to see the face of the monster. I do not know what I expected. I hoped it was all just some coincidence and that I was perhaps going crazy in all that had happened. But when I opened it, I looked at the picture, I let it fall to the ground, and I screamed. It was exactly her. The outfit was different, but it was her, at the same age. I lost my mind for a while and I stopped caring. I never came back from Camp Rosewood. I never felt joy after seeing Winnie's face. The same face I had welcomed in my cabin and yet had felt sick, just like the girl that had survived. I relived the night in the cabin, and I remember that Winnie never actually participated in anything too much, and she never ate or smoked or drank. She always had an excuse. I remember most mornings I would find her sitting at the kitchen table, looking out the window to the woods, as if in a trance. I thought she was just a whimsical daydreamer. The day she had come into the cabin, the counselors had already come. She came with us to the mess hall, and she came to classes, but none of the counselors ever seemed to address Winnie at all. Had they even seen her? Were the campers the only ones that were able to see her? I sent all of my findings to all the girls, even though I had not spoken to them in over a year, after I pieced Winnie and her story together. Surprisingly, all of them replied. For 4 years of high school, we talked every time we learned something new about the camp or Winnie. We kept the research up, and we all vowed that once we were legally 18 and no one could tell us no, we were going to the now very shut down Rosewood, and we were going to call Winnie and find out the truth once and for all. And we had been working on ways to kill her and rid her of this earth forever. But since we did not know what the hell she was, we made a plan for every possible outcome of what Winnie may be. 4 years flew by for us. We were able to overcome what happened to us. My once poor friends were now wealthy, and their families were taken care of. Everyone had come out a little bit on top for what we had endured. We stayed in contact with the other girls and created our own support group, and we meet once a year on the anniversary, and our families do too. They ask about Winnie too, but we tell them nothing. I think they sensed that something was never really right about her. The one burning question was, why had Winnie not just come in and killed them all, or killed them in their sleep, or killed them when the prisoners came? Why did she bond with them and act like one of the girls? Was it all her plan? Did she make the bus tip over? Did she manipulate the prisoners into going crazy? I had to know. Chapter 6. Graduation came and my parents showed up and left the next day. So did I. I picked up Rue first, as she was now living in Manhattan and they no longer had to hide their friendship. Their parents even tolerated each other on occasion. We flew to Georgia together directly. Rhea, Jessa, and Rhoda were meeting me at the airport. Since we flew in a couple hours early, we got a bite to eat and got the rental car and gassed it up, hit up a store and got everything on our list, iced up the coolers, and prepared for camping, as the camp no longer is connected to the town power. They apparently were having issues after the storm, and once they turned off the camp grid, there was no more issues. None of us thought that was a coincidence. When we arrived, we drove close to the camp and rented a motel. When they arrived, we drove close to the camp and rented a motel. We wanted to have a full day to hike there to get our bearings. We were all covering this for our social media platforms, but we were not going live. We did not want anyone knowing what we were doing until we could stop Winnie. In the morning, we showered for the last time for the next few days and made sure we were ready to go. It was only a 20-minute drive to the camp. As soon as we saw the camp arch, we stopped and got out to take a minute and pray for protection and for all the little girls and people lost that day. We parked and secured the car and arms locked. We walked into the camp that changed our lives forever. We were scared shitless. The camp had not been touched since they were done investigating for the trial. At least 2 years had passed since anyone had mowed or cleaned or opened any of the doors and windows. No one dared come up here. Not even local hunters will hunt up there, and there are plenty of game. You can feel the vibes from miles away. There's something wrong with that place, and you just knew it was trouble. But we had to know. We had to know why that had happened to us. Why that year? Why that cabin? Why that bus? How was it all connected? I needed to know to get my sanity back. I was still stuck in that cabin, and I was not leaving that place until I was free of all of it. Chapter 7. We were setting up camp, and the noon sun was high. It didn't feel tragic. I looked around and remembered all the campers on the beach and heading to activities and all the wonderful memories before. But as soon as I turned and looked at the cabin, I got the same sick feeling. As we sat and ate lunch, I told them about how I felt sick when Winnie first came, and how I felt she was lying, and I felt nuts for feeling that way about a stranger, and I fought it. I told them that I had caught her trying to get rid of the paper that was next to the walkies, and I had taken it from her, and she had gotten angry with me, and I felt like she was going to hurt me, but then she just smiled and moved on. I was surprised that they all had gotten weird vibes around her at some point. It just made it all more confusing. We knew that she would come when she wanted to come, if she was ready, but we were not going to... Hey! Sorry. Very naughty kitty over there. We knew that she would come when she wanted to come if she was ready, but we were going to do our best to draw her out. Excuse me! Every time I read this part. We would sleep in the cabin. We closed what was left of it up. I wanted to puke, and I knew then that she was coming. We heard her whistling up the stairs. We clung together in the center of the room and stood as she came into the frame. We did not see the child we saw then. We saw the haggard, pale face with no eyes. A demon. You came back to me. I am so glad. I have been thinking about you every day since you left this camp. All of us were expecting a little girl, and this was terrifying. But I stepped in front of my friends. Can it, Winifred, you murderous bitch? I want some answers, and you're going to give them to me. She roars her wicked head back, and the sound that pours from her has all of us dropping to our knees, huddled and clamping our ears. You do not tell me, McKenna. I tell you. When the ringing in my ears stops, I lift the tiny super soaker I filled with holy water and shoot it at her face. It burns and she hisses and screeches back outside the door. You cross that threshold again and I will light you up. Stop with the dramatics. We get it. You're a demon. Why did you come to the cabin that year? Our year. To our shock, she transforms back into the girl they remembered, and she sits on the front stairs, smoking a joint like we all did that night. I have watched you be friends. All the people not supposed to be friends. I killed girls like you, McKenna, because I was a scholarship kid like your friends. I just wanted to be seen. I wanted to have friends, but no matter how much I tried, no one would be nice to me. They considered beating me up a sport. One night, I ran into the woods to hide. They were scared of the woods and wouldn't go in them. I got lost. Something happened to me that night. I died there. Me. I am Winnie. Not that thing you saw. It came to me first like a child. The one thing I wanted. We played and she cleaned me up and took me into the woods to pick berries. Then she turned on me and I ran, but it was getting dark. I was lost. She came out of the woods. I never did. I was there. I saw her take the knife and I saw her do all she did and I heard her laughing and enjoying it. I screamed and I screamed, but I couldn't stop it. And then she killed me. I have been stuck here ever since. When she wants to come out, she makes me be seen by campers. It was my fault. I was watching you and I wanted to be like you guys and I drew her to you and I am so sorry. But you need to get the hell out of here because she is not going to let you live if you stay till dawn. I can buy you 15 minutes. Leave everything and get the hell out right now because if you don't... We all looked up. The faces of everyone who died in the massacres over the years were there standing, watching them. We are all stuck here. Get out while you can. I do not know why I believed her, and I knew she meant what she was saying. I grabbed my pack and I looked around. Are we moving or do you need more answers? They all shook their heads and arms locked, leaving our tents, we ran. We all heard Winnie's voice. Hurry, I can't hold her off much more. She knows you're leaving. Run as fast as you can. She is coming. I couldn't breathe. My legs were screaming and it felt like my body was on fire, but I kept pushing. Rhea fell at my side, and without pausing, I reached down and lifted her, and she held tight as we continued to run. We hear that demon hot on our heels. The ground was shaking all around. A tree branch breaks and misses me by inches, but I jump and keep going. Do not stop until your ass is in the van! I take the keys out of my pocket and I click the button. The arch is almost within reach. I felt it in my gut. Jump now! We all leap and roll across the archway. Get up and get into the van! As my friends run, I look back, and the once lady-sized demon is now huge and frothing at the mouth. The darkness got even more darker. And then I looked back at the van. My friends were nearing it, and without thinking, I ran towards them. Once we were all in the van, we all stopped, panting, watching her pace. and we realized that she cannot cross the camp archway. The demon looks up, but I look up above her. What once said Camp Rosewood now said, "Do not enter, or you will not exit." She blinked and I blinked and looked again. Do you guys see that too? Bruce smiles. Maybe if they didn't paint Rosewood over the warning, we wouldn't have been in this pickle in the first place. Despite it all, despite a demon frothing at the mouth and trying with all its might to break the barrier, the van filled with laughter. I turned the key and flipped it on. One day we will come back, and we will free Winnie and all the others and kick that thing's ass back to hell. But not before we know how to do that. All heads shook. Rhoda sighs. I love you and all, but if you do not get the fuck out of here, I will backseat drive us home. With a giggle, I rolled my eyes. Hold your britches, lady. Here we go. We made it yet again, and yet again, thanks for those on the other side looking out for us. I drove out of there, and the van grew quiet. All of us were lost in our thoughts. I may not have found a way to be those innocent kids that went to camp together, but I found a way to keep us friends forever. No one ever really wants to come together because people are trapped and helpless, but this is the glue that holds a bond I cherish. I know one day we will come back and we will find a way to get them all out of there and stop that demon forever. And even once that was done, the circle of friends was going to last until the end. One day our daughters will be friends and have summers together. It will not be at a summer camp, but it will be an experience that holds them together forever too. There is magic in this bond. I can feel it in my bones. The end. I hope you liked it. I'll see you all next time. Bye! Oh, don't forget to give this a like up. I just can't speak. My dyslexia is taking over today. I'm sorry. Give me a thumbs up below if you liked it. Toodles, boy!